All right, let's talk about some Boolean logic. Okay, now in the past videos we've talked about the different conditions and how we can evaluate those conditions to either get a true or a false. Now, what if we have multiple conditions? Meaning, what if we were to try to figure out, if x is greater than 5 and less than 8? Or if we wanted to find out if x is less than 5 or x is greater than 8. The way the computer does this is uses truth tables. Okay, and here's an example of truth tables for both and or. Now, with an and, if both sides evaluate true, right, true and true, the whole thing is true. If it's false and false, the whole thing is false. The trick comes in where one side is true and one side is false. The way the and works is it says if one of the sides is false, then the entire thing is false, and that's the key. So if one side is false, the whole thing's false. No and, if, or, but about it. It's just how it works. This is in contrast to the or. Again, the or says, well, if they're both true, the whole thing's true. If they're both false, the whole thing's false. However, if at least one side is true, then the whole thing is true. All right? So let's evaluate a couple statements using Python. All right? So I'm going to slide this out of my way a minute here. And we're going to say, okay, let's set x equal to 5. All right? So we're going to check x greater than 5 and x less than 8. Okay? So we're going to see what that says. And it says false. Okay? Because x is not greater than 5 and x is not less than 8. But what if x was equal to 6? Okay, we evaluate the same statement. Now it's true, okay? Because x is both greater than 5 and less than 8. So let's try another number. Let's try x equal to 8, for example. Again, it's false, okay? The reason why is while 6 is greater than 5, right? And it's also less than 8. That's why we got the true. But here, even though 8 is greater than 5, it is not less than 8. And because of that, it evaluates false. Okay? Let's take these same numbers. So we're going to take x equals 5. And let's evaluate our or statement. So x is less than 5 or x is greater than 8. Notice it's false. Okay? Because x is neither less than 5 or greater than 8. Well, what if x is 4? Okay? It's true, right? Because 4 is less than 5. Even though it's not greater than 8, it's still less than 5. So we've been able to properly evaluate that statement to say, okay, at least this side is true and this side is false. And you can do that this way too. You can say, if you really want to test your truth tables like we had in our spreadsheet, you can do this. True and true. It says true. True and false is false. True or false is true. So this here really allows me to validate my true statements. You can even do this. 0 and 1 is a 0, right? Because that means false. 1 and 1 is a 1. That means it's true. So there's different ways in which you can evaluate these to really test your and your or. The idea, though, is to make sure you understand, right? It comes back to this general principle that with our tables, right, 2 trues for an and make a true. 2 trues for an or make a true. 2 falses for an and makes a false, and 2 falses for an or makes a false. The kick comes in where you have that combination of trues and falses. just remember with an and, the only way an and will ever be true is if they're both true. So true and true is the only way to get a true. For an or, the only way to get a false is if they're both false. Okay? So feel free to pause the video at this point and kind of type this stuff in, play around with that a little bit, and see what happens before we move on to the next one. Okay, so now we come into what is called not. Okay? Not essentially is the opposite. Okay? So if I do something like this, let's say var is greater than 0. Okay? The not version of that would be not var less than or equal to 0. Okay? These two statements are equivalent, right? They mean the exact same thing. It's like saying var equal to 0. Okay? We could say not var equal to 0. That's the same as saying var not equal 0. Okay? Those essentially are the same thing. So not basically means the opposite. All right? So let's go over here and test this. So let's go back to one we did earlier. Okay? So x is going to be equal to 5. Now, earlier what we did is we said, okay, x greater than 5 and x less than 8, right? So that returned a false. Now watch. Not x greater than 5 and x less than 8. Notice it says true, right? Not essentially does the opposite, okay? So if it's true, not makes it false, okay? So that's kind of what you have to remember, okay? Truth tables can start to drive you crazy after a while. The real simple way to think about it is just break it down, simple trues and falses, okay? Know which side you're evaluating on and know your truth tables. These right here will be your saving grace. The thing to remember about nots is just remember it's the opposite, okay? So if you do not true, that means it's false. If it's not false, that means it's true, okay? And that's what you have to do. Evaluate your statements and just keep an eye on them. And then break them down if you need to, okay? Try not to make things so painful. Over here, you notice we've got our parentheses. So we still use our order of operations. You know, this whole thing in here, when x is 5, is false. So if it's not false, that means it's true. Same way if I did it this way. Not x less than 5 and x greater than 8. Okay? Notice it's true because x is 5, x evaluates false here, and it's false here, so the whole thing is false. So not false means it's true. Okay? Like I said, biggest thing is just to kind of play around with it a little bit and really look at what you're trying to drive home. Okay? What are you trying to evaluate? Because that's different than if you did this. Not x less than 5 and x greater than 8. Okay? This evaluates false. And why? Because while x is, when you do this, okay, so x is 5, this evaluates as false, right? And this is false, so the whole thing's false. It's just kind of a weird way to look at this because you're actually doing this first. You're saying not this, okay? So this is false. You change it to true because not false is true, and then do this, which is also false, but then two falses make a false. So think of your order of operations, right? You're not, then this, and then the and. Here, we put this whole thing in parentheses, okay? So this is not, right? This is false. Not false is true. This is false, but true and false make it false, okay? It's that order of operations thing, okay? You really just kind of have to watch of how it works, okay? Again, go back to your truth tables, know those, and understand that if something's not true, it's false, and if it's not false, it's true. Okay? Play around with some of those examples, see what you think, and go from there. Okay? If you have questions, as always, feel free to contact me. If not, I bid you good morning, good afternoon, good evening.